Hey everyone, welcome to today's video. My name's Stephanie, and today we are taking a trip through time with ILNP's Rewind collection. This is a 6-piece lineup of these nostalgic muted pastels that have the daintiest holo sparkle in them. So as always, I will save more of my thoughts for the end after some comparisons. For now, let's just get into the swatches. The first shade we have is Dear Diary, and this is described as a soft pink sherbet holo Crellie. So the formula on this one was really smooth, super easy to apply and work with. I would say that it was very even coverage as well. Unsurprisingly, because it is that Crellie jelly kind of finish, it definitely still is going to be very sheer, where I still saw visible nail line even after 2 coats. It wasn't super noticeable. I feel like I mostly had a kind of bald spot near the right side of my nail, so I would kind of blame that more on my application, which, you know, I'm always going to mention a paddle brush would have made it so much better. So I did end up doing a 3rd coat for the live swatch for this, which you can see here, and it looks so beautiful. I love this soft warm pink color, but for my full hand swatch I just decided to do 2 coats just to show you how that looks in direct sunlight, and I feel like I couldn't see any visible nail line. So I can see why these shades lean into that Crellie category, where it's just a bit more buildable. Next up we have Claire, which is described as a baby pink holographic Crellie. So this one is definitely much lighter and cooler toned compared to Dear Diary. I think I would say that this wants to be like an orchid pink, because I feel like there's a little hint of this like purple kind of tone, which I wasn't sure about, you know, seeing it in the bottle, but once I applied it on my nails, I really loved how it looked. I feel like it's just so bright and fresh and dainty, just a super cute, flattering shade with a little bit of sparkle. And as far as the formula goes, this also had a very smooth, easy to apply formula. Because it's so light, it shouldn't be surprising that this one is one of those shades that probably needs 3 coats. That's what I ended up doing for my live swatch, but for my full hand swatch with the 2 coats, I feel like there is more noticeable visible nail line, especially compared to the other pink. So personally, I would call this more of like a milky jelly, where, you know, there's like a little bit of coverage, but it's not fully opaque. Next up we have Scrunchie, and this is a dusty lavender holographic Crellie. So even though this is described as a lavender, I feel like this could lean into like a dark or dusty periwinkle territory. Maybe it just depends on the lighting or the surroundings, but I feel like sometimes it just leaned a little bit more blurple than just like a true purple. Either way, it's a really pretty shade, and I do like how muted and dusty it is while still being colorful. This one also had a really nice formula, where I would say it's definitely more of that Crellie buildable, like opaque kind of finish, where you can see just how much coverage I have here on 2 coats. I think if you look close enough, you might still see like a little hint of nail line, but for the most part, this is just very, very full coverage and pigmented, so you likely wouldn't need a 3rd for the shade unless your nails are a lot longer or you just prefer doing much thinner coats than I do. Then we have Low Rise, which is a faded denim blue holographic Crellie. I'm not sure how sky blue this looks to you, but this definitely is like a very accurate light wash jean color. I thought it was just so spot on. This one had another really great formula that was very pigmented, relatively even coverage on the 1st coat, where I would say it reminded me a lot of Scrunchie, the previous shade. The 2nd coat though, I feel like was kind of looking a little streaky, so I sort of worked it a little bit more, and thankfully this did self-level really beautifully, so I got it opaque enough for me on 2 coats. Again, I feel like you can still see a hint of nail line if you're looking really close, but it's just not enough to warrant a 3rd coat for me personally. Crellies definitely have the potential to become fully opaque, but I love how these are just a little squishy. The next polish we have is Dollhouse, and this is described as a retro mint green holographic Crellie. If you watched my spring favorites video for this year, you know that I have been feeling these soft minty greens, so no surprise, this one is one of my favorites from this lineup. It is just so bright and fun and fresh, again paired with that dainty holo. I just love it so much. The formula on this was okay, kind of similar to the past couple of shades where it was relatively even coverage. I think the plus side for these is that they self-level really well, so even if they are a little bit streaky or patchy on that first coat, you can do a slightly thicker second coat and it just evens out really nicely. I could see this one needing a third coat depending on your preference, but I of course just stopped it at 2 because I love that squishy look. And rounding out the collection, we have Lunchbox, which is a pastel yellow holographic Crellie. If you watched my recent destash video going through all of my yellows in my collection, you know that I was so excited for this shade. I love a cute little pastel yellow, and it was just so nice to see one in this kind of finish because I feel like usually lighter kind of yellows don't really work with holographic because the holo just kind of makes them silvery or like dingy. And don't get me wrong, you definitely can see those little silvery holo flecks once you build this up, especially in 3 coats. So I didn't love that, but I do love this shade of yellow, so I'm a lot more forgiving of it. As you can see, I ended up building this one up in 3 coats for my live swatch because I feel like the second coat just was a little too patchy, at least on my thumbnail. When I did the 2 coats for the rest of my full hand swatch, I think that it looked really good. It reminded me of Claire in that way, where it's just such a light color that you're gonna see visible nail line, but at least it was even coverage. And here is the collage of my full hand swatches so you can see all these shades together. Again, I'm wearing 2 coats with top coat and in direct sunlight, and I think they look really great here. Like, I love the colors. I think they're so soft and pretty. I love the dainty holo sparkle. It's nice how buildable these were as well, being Crellies, but if anything, I would say that Claire leans the most like a jelly. Getting into comparisons, I have a couple of bottle comparisons for Dear Diary. The first ones are with Sweet Tooth and Pixie Party, both of which are these warm, shimmery pinks from ILNP, but they're just like too saturated, not the right tone. So for some more muted pinks, I thought to compare it to ILNP's Pink Suede and Mooncat's Velvet Rose. But as you can see, both of those shades are just a little too muted and too dark. Here is Dear Diary next to Holo Taco's Nip in the Bud and Pinky Swear, both of which are the closest pinks that I have to Dear Diary, but obviously not close enough to be anywhere near a dupe. I thought that Cracked Polish's Pink Velvet would be kind of close color-wise. They definitely look really close on camera, but I think Pink Velvet is just a little bit warmer, not to mention the fact that it's like a pearlescent kind of finish. But then I remembered Cirque's Plush Suede, which is this beautiful, dusty, warm pink with a dainty holo. The main thing that sets it apart is that bright coppery shimmer, which for whatever reason isn't really showing up that well on camera unless it's like a specific angle, but in real life I could definitely see that shimmer, so it's not enough that I would call it a dupe, but they're definitely very close color-wise. Then for Claire, I was immediately reminded of Holding Hands and Sweet Pea, both from ILNP, because they are these cool toned kind of pinks that have a little hint of purple in them, and they also both have that dainty holo sparkle, though I will say it is the daintiest in Claire and the most prominent in Sweet Pea, where it has this like slightly larger flaky kind of look. Holding Hands is definitely the closest, but it's a bit more punchy in color. I did also want to see this next to Cracked Polish's She Doesn't Even Go Here, which is their milky baby pink jelly. That one's a little too like cotton candy looking though, so I thought I could try to layer Lavender Chai over that to bring in that twinge of purple, but that just didn't really work out. Next for Scrunchie, I knew I wanted to see this next to Lily, which was the muted purple from last year's Velvet collection. I thought they were going to be similar at first, but Lily is definitely a lot lighter, more of a true lavender shade. This is what I was talking about where Scrunchie wants to be like periwinkle, not to mention the fact that it's just so much more opaque than Lily. And here it is next to ILNP's Butterflies and Holo Taco's Wild Child. These are both creams, but again, just for color reference, I guess, you can really see how much more blue-toned Scrunchie is. I was also reminded of Cracked Polish's Rocky Mountain Iris, which is kind of like this muted, dusty purple, but I remembered it to be like so much darker than it is. Here, seeing them side by side on the nail, it is just way too light to compare. And lastly, I have a quick bottle comparison for Pitter Patter, which I thought was going to be closer, but I kind of forgot just how gray that was. Moving on to Low Rise, I didn't have any blues close enough to this, so here are some bottle comparisons for some other ILNP blues, including Carried Away and Up Above. Carried Away has the same finish, but it's more of a lighter cornflower shade, so not dupes. In a similar vein, I did also want to quickly show this next to Holo Taco's Spyglass, which is a light, soft blue with a gorgeous hollow sparkle, but again, that's more like cornflower. And here it is next to Holo Taco's Skipping Stones and Olive Ave's Cornflower, both of which are just not similar at all. Skipping Stones is more of like a pastel sky blue, Cornflower is cornflower, so hopefully you can see just how denim Low Rise actually is. Moving on to Dollhouse, I wanted to quickly show this next to Velour from the Velvet collection. That one is a light, soft spring green, but it's a lot more yellowy, not as minty. So the closer ILNP shades that I have are Riding Waves and Princeton. Riding Waves is the closest when it comes to that sparkly, hollow jelly finish, but it's a bit more turquoise or maybe like a brighter sea foam in color. Princeton is more minty and it has like a linear hollow, but even on the nail, it's just a bit too dark. You can see just how light and like white based of a pastel Dollhouse is. And lastly, here's a quick bottle comparison for Holo Taco's Time After Time from the Cottage Core collection. It's kind of close, but that one's even more white based. And lastly, for Lunchbox, I wanted to quickly show this next to Olive Ave Sunshine, which is one of my favorite pastel yellows. That one's obviously a cream though, and it's also a bit more vibrant. So when it comes to a pastel yellow jelly, I knew I had to show this next to Cirque's Go Away from the MXM Tune collection. But again, even that one is still a little too vibrant. So I had to layer linen over that, which is the sheer white, to just kind of soften it a little bit. I actually ended up doing 3 coats of Lunchbox here, but if I had only done 2, I think it would be a lot closer. So that wraps up my swatches and comparisons of ILNP's Rewind collection. As always, I would love to know your thoughts on this release because I think it's super cute. You know that I'm a sucker for a sweet little pastel, and just having this colorful lineup is so fun. I feel like it's just so nostalgic. It just like brings me back to these simpler, more innocent times, which, you know, it would be nice to experience again. I feel like ILNP just does such an incredible job with curating their collections to match the themes. Like, they are so fun. I also think it's really interesting that they kind of swapped their spring releases, because usually the first release of the spring season has these like softer, more muted kind of pastel shades, and the second release is a lot brighter, probably because it's closer to summer. But obviously this year they kind of switched it up and reversed it for us, which I don't know how I feel about it. I mean, obviously, when I did the candy coated review, I was really excited to see such bright colors like so much earlier. Like, you know that I love that whole collection, but I guess in a way, I kind of was curious to see what they were gonna do with the second release. Like, I was hoping for some more bright colors, like just obviously in a different direction than candy coated, but instead, you know, we got these softer, muted kind of pastel shades, which, don't get me wrong, like I think are still so freaking cute, but they just don't really like hit the same, especially coming after candy coated. Like, I just love that collection so much, and I wouldn't have been mad if we got like even more bright colors, you know, instead of these like typical pastel shades. But I don't know. I know it's such a nitpicky thing. I just wanted to talk about it because I wanted to see how many other people feel the same way, or, you know, if you don't care, maybe you like these shades even more than candy coated. I would love to know, so make sure to let me know any and all thoughts that you have down below so we can chat about it. But thank you so much for hanging out with me today. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!